privilege often masks our vision, blurs our vision. White people often have trouble seeing racism. Men often have trouble seeing sexism. Straight people often have trouble seeing heterosexism. I know this because of who I am. I'm a scholar who studies racism, sexism, and heterosexism. I also know this as the daughter of a lesbian woman. I watched this my whole life, studied it in the lab, and I was particularly motivated to see instances of heterosexism and sexism and to explain them so that I could have interactions with people that made a meaningful difference toward eradicating them. Then I had this interesting experience around 40 that made me realize that I had a lot that I didn't see. I came out late in life. And on the doorsteps of 40, I was embracing the fact that I was a lesbian woman and learning how other people would interact with me as a function of that identity. I was excited about this. I was surrounded by people who loved and supported me. I was happy to realize that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I'm just a dyke. And I, as a researcher, knew what was coming. I didn't think it would be easy, but I knew what to predict and what to expect, or so I thought. And what surprised me about the whole thing was that there were things I had never seen before that happened, things that shook me. On the one extreme, I had never before seen the look of hatred and contempt that I saw a few times with groups of lesbian women. And I had never been so shook and frightened for my safety when looks of hatred were paired with sexual aggression and people and a man in two different environments suggested things equivalent to bend you over and I'll make you straight. And I didn't know if I was going to get home safe that night, and that scared me. And then I saw connections I had never seen before. So on the complete other extreme were these really subtle acts of sexism, this subtle sexualizing behavior from colleagues, from peers that I had always seen. As a tomboy growing up, I know you hit a line drive down the middle and do pretty well, and then boom, there's a little sexualization, but it's well-intentioned. But now, in the landscape of what was happening on the other end, it didn't seem so well-intentioned, and it went with flickers of anger and hostility sometimes. And I thought, if I could miss this, as a straight woman who was a huge ally and really wanted to see it, then it should be even easier for a man to miss it, given how we socialize masculinity in America. To be a good man means to be strong, to be powerful, to be tough. You should lead rather than follow. Influence rather than be influenced. Control rather than be controlled. Men also have to be tough. Physically, emotionally, and mentally tough. Able to withstand pain. Able to be cognitively alert in the face of distractions, and always able to resist feeling tender emotions. And there's this component that's called the anti-femininity component. No matter what else, men can be nothing like women and nothing like gay men. And in fact, if you think about how, some of the worst things you could call men and how masculinity is socialized, we often see imputations of womanliness, sissiness, or imputations of gayness. And you can see this effect in the literature, in prior research, where threats to masculinity or being like a woman, having to do a female task, or learning that you share opinions or knowledge with a woman, being similar to a woman, or as my own research shows, being outperformed by a woman in a stereotypically masculine domain, akin to she threw harder than you, that leads to this thing I'm going to call public discomfort. It's concern or worry about how you look in the eyes of others. And it makes sense that men would feel this because men are socialized, whether you reject gender roles or not. You know that if you're a bad man, if you're like a woman, through socialization, this is the edge of being punished, socially and physically punished. But what my experiences led me to wonder is if you might also see connections with anger, because that's what I hadn't seen before. And in fact, this makes sense. If men aren't supposed to feel tender emotions like worry, then it should rapidly turn to something manly, like anger. And if it turns to anger, do you see the sexualization of women follow? It was the primary question in some of my previous research. And of course, we would expect sexual violence to follow from anger, but I'm going to suggest that subtle acts of sexualization also follow from this anger. And we tested this in the lab by having students come in. Me and my graduate student collaborators, Julia Dahl and Kevin Weaver, brought people into the lab, paired them with a woman. You're going to be on the same team. You're going to perform in this masculine domain. And we had them take tests. And we simply told them that the men performed better than the women, or the women outperformed the men. The threat condition is you just got beat by a girl condition. Then they reported public discomfort, anger, and then we asked them they were both assigned tasks. The men all had to dress avatars that were going to represent themselves and their female partner in future interactions. And all they had to do in the dead of winter, all run in January with snow on the ground, is decide how they would dress their female partner. And what we found was that we replicated this pattern, and that anger led to the sexualization, the subtle sexualization of their female partners, with men who were low in anger, dressing them somewhere between long sleeves and short sleeves in January with snow on the ground, and highly angry men putting them in a tank top, closer to a tank top. Now, you might say this is stuff that happens in the lab, and it's subtle, but if we look across a variety of contexts in the real world, we can see these effects over and over again. Let me just show you 30 years of Playboy covers. As women push into different domains, and we see the women of the US government, the women of Mensa, the women of Wall Street, NYPD nude, and the women of the Olympics. And this isn't just media moguls sexualizing women. We would never do that. Let's look at what pops up on a Google search, where the top clicked and the most frequently searched topics come up. And if we look at the top 5 and we put in female politicians, the number 1 is the 25 most gorgeous female politicians. And if we look at the top 5, we'll see a pattern like this across Google searches. Female politicians, female athletes, female journalists, newscasters, female Olympians. And we do this with great intensity and enthusiasm when we come across a woman who's particularly dominant in a stereotypically masculine domain, like Ronda Rousey. She is a champion UFC fighter. This is mixed martial arts, and she's a particularly interesting case because she dominates across genders, and she makes more money than anybody else in the sport when she was fighting, whether we look male or female, and whether we look at pay-per-view revenues or salary. She is fierce, and when you Google her, here's the images that pop up. If you look from left to right across the top, you'll see the images that help us categorize what people might most frequently be looking for. And we get some swimsuits and yoga pants and stuff, and you get to about, I think, 9 before you get to MMA, which is mixed martial arts, or judo. By the way, she's gold medal Olympian judo, and all the way down to fight. And you might say Sports Illustrated, ESPN, those are sports magazines, but no, here she is when you click on the Sports Illustrated button, and here she is when you click on the ESPN button. The more a woman dominates in a stereotypically masculine domain, the more we seem to do this to her. And it's not just for those of us older in the room. Let me just say Serena. What pops to mind? Isn't she synonymous with tennis? And yeah, we sexualize her a little bit sometimes, but Serena's fierce, and all that comes to mind is tennis. Or not. If we go left to right, you'll see that we have ESPN, we have her in swimsuits with this fellow Drake she used to date. We see her relationship with her sister, we see her in a dress, and her relationship with her ex-boyfriend again, and then we get to tennis, which is what she's known for. And this is not about us looking at sports and athletic bodies and wanting to adore them or admire them because they're particularly beautiful. We do this with women in all domains. Marissa Mayer is president and CEO of Yahoo. She started at Google, was one of the first 20 employees at Google, and the first female engineer. When she was asked what it's like to be the first female engineer, she said, "Oh, it's fine. I think of myself as a nerd and I fit right in." And she looks kind of nerdy here in her Google pictures. And then we flip over to CEO at Yahoo. And these images popped up right away. Upon becoming CEO at Yahoo, we saw the immediate sexualization of her. We don't know the source of this lovely image sitting on a ball in 3-inch heels getting ready to lead Yahoo. But we can see it in other outlets as well, as when Vogue did an interview with her and depicted the president and CEO of Yahoo on the pages of Vogue in this way. Now, you might just say, this is locker room talk. Boys will be boys. This is what boys do. But I would like to suggest to you that it's really important that we question that framing. In all of my classes, I pause every semester at Penn State, and I ask the women in the room, I just want to see the hands. I'm going to ask one question, and if you have not been personally affected by rape, raise your hand. And when I say personally affected, I mean you yourself, a very close friend or a family member, have not been victim of rape or attempted rape. Once every couple of years, one woman will raise her hand not having been affected, and most semesters, everybody's been affected. Every semester for 17 years, I've asked the question of, is there a woman in this room that has not felt fearful of their personal safety? And not one woman there's never been one woman who raised their hand and said, nope, I've never been afraid. These things happen in a context, and even though they happen on the subtle side, like my experiences with well-intentioned men, they also happen in a context of fear of rape. And in fact, we know from my own findings that the sexualization of women is linked to masculinity, threat, and aggression. So women aren't making up this link. And if I run the studies, which I did, a bunch of follow-up studies, and do you see this same pattern emerge with more openly aggressive acts of sexualization or things related to that? What you see in my research with graduate students John Gallegos and Nat Radcliffe is that yes, in fact, we find that men who are like a woman, are threatened like a woman, feel uncomfortable, become angry, and then adopt perspectives of others less well, feel less empathy, have increased beliefs that some groups should dominate others, increased beliefs or increased denial that rape is a serious problem, and an increased self-reported likelihood to participate in sexual harassment. So what can we do? How do we deal with this situation? Or how do we more generally deal with the situation of being privileged people and trying with legitimate interest in seeing discrimination, racism, sexism, heterosexism? And my suggestion is to become an ally, a true ally. And what I mean by an ally is to avoid normalizing sexism, in this case, the sexualization of women, or any other form of ism you're interested in being an ally. But it's important for us not to define things as locker room talk. It's not to think it's okay that boys will be boys. Don't normalize it. Listen. It's given. We're not going to see what members of other groups see. I never saw the look of hatred because it didn't happen with straight people around me. My African American colleagues don't see the look of hatred often with white people around them. They see it in groups where they're more threatening. Because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And we have a long history of knowing what it's like to respect other people and learn from them. We don't have to see it. We don't have to see gravity to know it happens. We have to respect the people that are teaching us, that are telling us. And lead. Please do lead. Be powerful. Be influential. Lead, but lead in your in-group. Not overall, not trying to fix it for us, and by all means not trying to be benevolent, paternalistic men that will save us. Lead within groups of men trying to change the norms of what is appropriate talk in context with women present and with women absent. And remember, your goal is to be chosen as an ally. We choose our own allies. You don't choose us. And if you want us to choose you as an ally, if you want women to choose men as allies, As we strive, we need to be not loved and adored as family members who want to be protected. We want to be respected as colleagues and neighbors. And we want to be listened to, and we want to be around men who are willing to say that I'm not intimidated by locker room talk or pussy grabbing. I don't need to accept this, and that the people who think that this is normal might be 40 or 50 years my senior. And in 2016, we can redefine what masculinity is. Thank you.